This is Common Sense Generation. Common Sense Generation. Hello, everyone. You are watching Common Sense Generation. My name is Kądzielska-Koper, and today we'll talk about practical reason and what philosophers can tell us about everyday life. We have in the studio Professor Agnieszka Nogal, philosopher and the head of the Faculty of Philosophy of Politics from Warsaw University. Professor, thank you very much for coming.
To start with, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me here and creating a possibility to speak about practical rationality. For me, it's really important. But maybe I will start also by telling, the history why I am...
That's actually the question I want to ask you about is, of course, how did it happen that you become a philosopher? And what on earth is philosophy of politics? Because people can ask, okay, philosophy, that's Plato, Sartre, maybe Nietzsche, but those are usually, that's what rings the bells to an ordinary people. I mean, ordinary people from who are doing other things and then have some idea about philosophy. But actually, philosophy of politics. So what is it and why is it important and why you chose this path? Because I know you studied also law. So instead of being a lawyer, you decided it's worth to spend your life on doing philosophy.
Yes, and my personal history, I don't like to speak about myself, but my personal history, at least partially, describe why political philosophy is important. And I hope not only for me. And I was studying philosophy, curriculum like almost in every university. So generally, I was interested in analytical philosophy. But after a while, I was a little bit tired. Analytical philosophy concentrated on language, usage of language. Maybe after 3 years, I was, so to say, bored. And then I decided to move forward and to create a possibility to be involved in more practical life. So I decided to take a study of law at the Faculty of Law. And that's it, yes. And during my studies of law, I realized how important the discussion about law is, the legitimization of law, how law should work. And it was so important there, not at the Faculty of Philosophy, but at the Faculty of Law. Generally, the majority of my older colleagues, professors at the Faculty of Law, they were realists. So each order of the legitimized government, they treated it as a legitimate law. But even they had an interest in discussion about why that type of law and not the other. So at the Faculty of Law, I realized how important thinking, yes, I don't want to even call it philosophy, but thinking for our order, legal order and also political order, because, one is strictly connected to the other is. And
so basically existing political order and legal order comes from certain philosophical decisions that we decide to organize the state in a certain ways, and people needed to make those decisions and where they come from. And those are philosophical questions. And as I understand, the Faculty of Philosophy of Politics are asking and observing how the state can be organized and in which way, and where does it come from. And so very often we think, it exists like this, it should be done like this. But was it always done like this? Or is it the only way of doing it?
Okay, and you can look at the order, yes, political order and legal order, as a result of pure will. Yes, that we had, I don't know, a party, and the majority of the party decided that it should be like that. And when you are treating such an order as a result of pure decision, there is no place for discussion. But at the same time, even in everyday life, we are providing such a discussion. Yes, we are providing competition between parties, and we are trying to argue for that or another solving of a political problem, way of solving of political problems. So we need an argumentation. And it was a reason why I became more and more concentrated on rationality. Rationality, that practical type of rationality, treating decisions not only as a result of pure will, because then there is nothing to say, but as a result of decision based on knowledge. On knowledge about good society, well-ordered society. Of course, we have many visions of a well-ordered society, but if we take the stand of political rationality, we can provide at least a discussion which type of solving those problems is better than the other.
I would also go a step further. I don't know if you agree with me, but certain things, how the political system of the state should reflect the human nature. But here is, of course, a huge discussion if human nature exists and what is it common? Is it, but that human beings react in a certain way, that human beings have passions, have structure, and then this political order can either make it flourish, help to organize, bring some sort of help them to develop in a society, or work in a different way. For example, treat human beings as a form of the angels, or this perspective of Rousseau that we are in our form of in nature such amazing creatures that basically state is just killing us, and in other way bringing us trouble. But if we come back to the state of nature, then we're all going to be absolutely delicate, wonderful, and very easy to cooperate, which of course I think is a very romanticizing and creating a lot of problems, because then it is the basic idea of revolution is based on this, that we think that we will tear down any existing political system and all together jump to paradise, jump to heaven, and this jump will be created by sort of revolution. And during this jump, we all realize that we are going to hell.
Yes, and we were witnesses of such a hell many times in history. But thank you very much for that question. I remember one wonderful citation from Hannah Arendt, and she was reading Saint Augustine. She was writing. She wrote her PhD thesis on Saint Augustine. So funny coincidence between Arendt and Augustine, but both of them were pointed to the philosophical anthropology, that human nature is connected to the vision of the organization of the whole world. So that's the reason why to speak about anthropology, philosophical anthropology, human nature is so difficult, because it is connected to the vision of God, of creation, of relation between human being and the order of the world. So it creates many problems because of its theological roots. And for Arendt, easy way to go outside of that problem, theological problem of human nature was human condition, how it is perceived by humans, yes? But of course, you are right. And I would connect also that problem of revolution with theoretical and practical rationality. Because, from British perspective, that revolutionary thinking was based on theoretical thinking. And I remember those critiques of Edmund Burke, which was he was against theoretical thinking about philosophy, about politics also. That philosopher, usually sitting in a library, knew nothing about political reality, can write down a schedule of a revolution which should bring a wonderful result. Yes, strange, a little bit strange. So, in my opinion, it is very important to show problems organized around theoretical thinking when it is applied to politics. Because in theoretical thinking, we are taking some assumptions about human nature or human condition. And then we are trying to build a theoretical framework and look for political consequences of social agreement or such other purely theoretical ideas. And for
then it
me,
comes reality.
Yeah, and for me, and of course, that presumption are based on anthropological vision of human being as a human being. I don't know what it is, but Rousseau knew. So when you are looking at practical rationality, as Burke was doing, he was pointing out the need of more practical involvement. You have people, but people raised up in a special type of culture. People surrounded by concrete institutions. And there is no one final solution for human beings as human beings.
So people with different traditions, people speaking different languages at a different territory, different climate, situation, buildings, and with different culture very often. So all of those things cannot be so for universal standard human being, which whatever could be. But this leads us a little bit to the idea which I want to discuss with you today, and this is called subsidiarity and subsidiarity principle. I have a definition of the Oxford English Dictionary, which defines subsidiarity as the principle that the central authority should have a subsidiary function, performing only those tasks which cannot be performed at more local level. And this is, I think, a question which arises, an answer to a lot of needs or voice which comes right now, very often also from the youngest generation. So teenagers or people in their young 20s are coming into world to their maturity and asking why the state doesn't resolve the problem of poverty or education or health or every single aspect. So they would like to give to the state, to the central authority, the power to resolve every problem of humanity, every problem of a society, every of problem of their family as well. But here comes the role of subsidiarity, which comes, of course, from the Christian thinking. Is basically, no, the state level shouldn't resolve every single problem where the street is needed or how the children should be educated, because certain things should be decided on the lowest level. And this lowest level is usually very connected to what you said before, to resolve problems looking at the perspective of different human beings. Because if we want to bring a standard bread to every single, at least, let's say, citizen of a country that might be possible in the national state. But if we take a huge idea of, let's say, every European state, that becomes problem, because Spanish people are eating something else and French people or German people, and they want to eat also something else. So there comes the idea that the central government shouldn't decide every sphere of our life, but this comes also this element of that we are of responsibility, that we are responsible of resolving those problems. The community is responsible of resolving certain problems. And this part of responsibility is something which I think is a huge problem right now in the families, but also in the institutions, that we don't want to take this responsibility. We want to give it to the big authority. How do you look at it?
I'm completely agree with you. And I like the example of architecture. We can look at the architecture as a way of creating the most excellent ideal building. Yes. So we can have such an idea of ideal building, and then we have a practice of putting that practical realization of that ideal building everywhere. And of course, when you put the same building on Arctica and nearby the Africa, South Africa, for instance, you may realize that it's a little bit crazy. And in my opinion, it works similarly with that ideal vision of how state should work alike. And even if you are looking at political discussions and quarrels full of emotions, you may realize that, people have different vision of how it should be organized. And probably they have also reason for that, real reason. But those reasons are coming from their particular perspective and should be realized on a level of their everyday life, not on a level of state, or at, the most crazy idea is to move it even higher on the global scale. So for me, it's very important when you are speaking about subsidiarity, because subsidiarity also shows how practical rationality works. There is no one type of ideal state, because state has to answer on concrete problems, and there is no one perfect vision of education, of healthcare system, because we have different problems in different places of the earth. And I remember the discussion. Maybe I don't know if you take it as appropriate to the problem, but I remember the discussion between Plato and Aristotle on the question
of origins of philosophy.
Yeah.
But as we all know, the whole philosophy are just quotation to Plato. So
and I would add and Aristotle. So they were discussing
who was the biggest answer to Platonism.
Yeah. They were discussing the problem of education. And Plato had the vision, especially presented in fifth book of his great book on the state, in which, the ideal man should be created during the process of education. And in his opinion, not every person was capable of achieve that goal. So, but the system of education was should be, in his opinion, created by the state, and each individual could take a proper place in accordance to the level of education achieved. The level of excellency, yes, but the idea was a philosopher with the highest level of excellency.
But you mean that the standard also education should be for everyone at the beginning?
The same, yes.
And what was absolutely revolutionary with Plato was the fact that he put women in this basket as well.
Yeah.
So he treated women as other human beings.
Yeah.
Which didn't happen for a long time later after Plato. But this, I would think, is to showing how in this case, how open he was.
Yes,
So
but
everyone put in the same machine.
yeah, and let me compare that system with the proposition of Aristotle, because Aristotle realized that to have that vision in a practical level, you don't have to accept private houses, because private houses bring differentiated upbringing. So it's very questionable how parents can afford that level. And of course, Plato proposed a state-organized system of upbringing, whole upbringing. So for Aristotle,
whole upbringing, which we have to mention the fact, so he just wanted children to be taken away from parents and mothers to the whole society. So we don't know whose child is whose. Yeah. And so everyone is responsible for every child, which is, of course, the biggest stupidity ever, because then no one is responsible for anyone, no one. So this is Common Sense Generation. If you like this channel, please subscribe, share, and comment. Your voice really matters. Obviously, there was a big failure of Plato's looking at the...
And that failure was pointed out by Aristotle. And Aristotle put attention on the upbringing, but taking into account a material circumstances, that we could have a child with a high level of fear or very low level of fear. And the high level of fear person should be upbringing, with a little bit push toward the situation in which the fear will be somehow fighted by the young person. And at the other side, when you have a person with the tendency to risky behaviors, you have to show the consequences, possible consequences of such a risky actions. So you can upbring such a person, building a fear in putting a fear into that behaviors. So there is no one objective way of behaving, because we have different people at the beginning with different characters, with different attitudes toward the world. So in Aristotle's opinion, each upbringing should be organized around individuality and maybe provided successfully. And he was a successful teacher, yes, of Alexander the Great. So we can treat him as a very successful teacher. But successful teaching may be organized only if it is organized around concrete person with concrete circumstances of his or her character. So it can be provided by parents and can be provided by teacher, but not by anonymous teacher or state, but by concrete teacher, good teacher, which knows his pupils, yes? So we could call it a kind of, tutoring? Yes, now we would call it tutoring.
And here comes the question, and which I also want to ask you about, because I know you have a special opinion about it, is the family, the role of the family, and the role of the family in the political system a little bit. Because very often families are forgotten, or right now we don't want to take them into account. We look as if the family doesn't have this responsibility, or it's not part of the society, which in fact families are creating the society as altogether, and the biggest responsibility lays on parents, especially with upbringing, but on many other levels. So family is a sort of cell of a good society. Would you?
I would like to quote a very, very interesting feminist, Sybil Schwarzenbach, and she was pointed out the necessity of including woman in a state, but woman not as an universal human being, as usually liberals do, but woman as a woman. Woman involved in a home and in mutual relation of dependence, because we are coming into the world as dependent, completely dependent on others. And during our lifetime, we are partially dependent on others. And when we are old, we are also dependent. So houses are very important sphere of mutual support, but also of educating virtues and citizens, yes, because children are not only children, but also future citizens. And when we are looking from that perspective, houses and the system, how they work, how effective they are upbringing their children, creating a safe space and also a space for values and virtues is extremely important for the future society. So yes, I would also call myself feminist, but not feminist in liberal term that you are a feminist when you are less and less feminine.
Exactly. Sure.
But feminism, my feminism is a feminism which shows importance of femininity inside our society as even inside our political life, because those people are not only human beings, universal human beings, but concrete citizens in a concrete society.
So citizens who are born to the family and taken care of certain matters, who take part in their education, or I would say take the biggest load when it comes to upbringing, education, but also very often take healthcare and a lot of other things, which after all starts in the family, are then, according to the subsidiarity rule, should be resolved on many levels at the level of the family, and then goes further. We pass, for example, the element of education, state education, which I'm not against of, but I'm showing the fact that it should be sometimes suited differently for different people. And then we have these differences, which I also know you're right about. You mentioned about the differences of upbringing girls and boys. And right now, with this standard of education and the current social discussions, and are very much against boys and very much against men. So when we hear about white male dominance or white male at getting rid of it and getting rid of it, this certain brutality which comes with a manhood, we want to take away courage and some level of confidence from young men, and suddenly they lose their identity, and that's what we're observing right now in a society. But it comes from this. I think this part that we want to bring up girls and boys in the same way when they are not the same.
That's what I thought when we were speaking about theoretical model in politics and education. That you have the final vision of a final product of the process, without taking into account that you have a different input. Yes, and in my opinion, there is many places in a society for different characters, different abilities, and all of them are useful. So we shouldn't treat everybody the same way, because the results are result is very, very dangerous one. Even we have for higher rate of suicide between men than women in each age gap, each age group. So men sometimes treat themselves as useless. So it's really important to create a place for everybody with all of those different differentiations, and yes, in accordance to the principle of subsidiarity. I don't want to say that all men or guys are different than or all girls, but every time we have special individual human being with special character, special abilities, and only on the lowest level we can treat such a person with dignity. Yes, and the dignity is common, but at the same with a special respect to individuality and uniqueness, to make from that uniqueness the best we can. And it is only possible on the lowest level, in between personal contact, when we know each other, when we know that personal material circumstances. And of course, I am for state education. I am for universal measures and social justice. But at the same time, we should be, it should be known that you can't achieve objective results only helping people by official education. Also, families should be supported because, for instance, as example, some practices connected what we eat on everyday life basis. So we are looking at the family level, but as a result, we have a person, young person, child, young person, and adult, maybe, with obesity. And the result, consequences are put it in the whole society. So it can't be resolved on the level of the society. It can be solved on the level only of practice of the concrete
family.
Yes, concrete family, concrete household.
But here comes also this question of back again to the men-women, because we are especially in the Western world. So the education system is based on grading children on the way how they obey the rules. So if they more obey the rules, then they have better grades. If they are and if they need to chastise them all the time or discipline them, then they become to have worse grades, or they cannot go further, or they have problems. But boys are usually much harder to discipline than girls. Girls are easier to obey certain things. But this element of disobedience is important, and it shouldn't be always criticized and bring down. But if we give worse grades to men because they are they test the rules, they test the limits, they test something, then they suddenly they lose their confidence, or they are put somewhere they cannot grow, they cannot go to the best schools because in a certain moment they have worse grades. So that's unfair. But this also creates very obedient people who follow certain rules, and they don't want to test them, so they don't want to bring change. And I wouldn't say that all girls are very obedient, but I myself see how look back in the history of my education, and I'm a product of a private education because I couldn't pass into public education in this case, that I was just couldn't find myself in this huge group of 30 pupils in the classroom. Maybe because I was shy, but I also very disobedient. I was once sent to a scout a summer camp, and after a week of passing and getting some grades and things and them training me, I decided, okay, this is not for me. I'm just, and I left them. I took my backpack, I went out of the forest, and I said, okay, Mindy, put your grades and your some stars to other children, but not to me. But I also remember the fact that at certain moment, when you are looked at a good student, good pupil, that teachers even give you better grades for the same results, but only the fact that they remember, okay, you are a obedient student. That's fine. Even if here you perform a little bit worse, but you were altogether obedient student, you have better grades. And this is a stupid thing when it comes to a bigger majority, then suddenly we have more women at the universities than men.
Yes, you are right, and it has to work like that. We may realize that it has to work like that, because if you have 30 people, young people, in one classroom, you can't deal with disobeying guys or girls on an individual level, because it's not possible, simply because of time, your energy, and so yes, those obedient person get better notes. And we can ask one question: if Copernicus would write his theory, if he would be obeying, yes, the theories in his time. So we need, of course, an order. Order is important, and in each home there is an order, in each school there is an order, some rules which have to be obeyed. But at the same time, we need a place, a sphere in which we are treated as equal, with ability to search for truth. I don't like, for instance, speaking about knowledge as something which should be obeyed. Yes, because we are searching for knowledge. We are not obeying the truth, but we are searching for truth. And we need that perspective, individual perspective, questioning truths, looking forward, not listening to authorities. Yes, not listening to authorities. And my best example is Copernicus. We could imagine how it would look like when he was obeying authorities and, obeying all rules surrounded him during that period. So, no, we need both sides. But at the same time, you are right. The system is organized only in accordance to the first rules. Theoretically, we are speaking, and it's a kind of hypocrisy, because at the same time we are speaking about individuality, uniqueness, equality, but in practical life, everything almost is organized around hierarchy, obedience, and supporting the rules which are already existing.
And if we pass the power, so much power to the state, to the biggest state, then of course the hierarchy is necessary, because then we need disobedience in order to follow the rules, very often stupid rules brought by the central government. We saw this in a brutality. We saw those stupid rules of central government during the COVID pandemic, when the government had no idea how to deal with a pandemic, had no idea how to resolve certain problems, was improvising themselves. But then we had people so afraid of being rebels, so afraid of breaking rules, that they didn't enter forest, or they were wearing masks alone in the car, or following some other stupid rules which happened during the pandemic, and which made it very difficult for a lot of human beings, or it could bring to even worse results than the germ itself. But there was this sort of test how much independent we are, because it comes the question, because the system can be certainly made and created because of some necessities, but that comes the independent thinking, and this comes from the family, that we are, and I think this is the space for the value of common sense, that we are, even if we know the necessity of obeying certain rules, we comes to a family, and family gives us space and confidence that we know how to use our reason, and we have the sense of common sense in our mind, and we also have the courage to say, I follow you here, but here, if teacher, policeman, someone in the bureaucracy office we say, stop, this is my line, and you don't pass this line, and I also myself, I'm not allowing you to pass. This is sort of my space of freedom as a universal, as a human being and as a citizen, and this, I think, can be taught only in the family.
Yes, and you pointed out the courage as a necessary virtue, because rationality needs a courage, yes, to look forward, to question authorities, even the authority of the state. So the courage is extremely important, and in my opinion, in my personal opinion, it could be created generally at home, because in state education system, always fearful people will be treated better, because they are fearful of their notes and fearful of the impression which they make around them. But and of course they are not creating problems, so they are welcomed by the system, and it has to work like that because of the number of pupils in the classroom, the number of students at the university, and so on, so on. But at the same time, to create a world, we need a brave people who can reshape a world around them. And yes,
but here comes the question. Here comes the rule of subsidiarity. You don't try to reshape the whole state altogether and the whole world, but you start with your community, and you are active in your community. So family goes a little bit bigger to the state of community. There are groups of families, let's say. There is the small town, there are clubs, there are organization at the university. There is the level of community when a brave individual can step up and say, okay, the road should be here, or we should resolve this problem this way, or let's try this way. But if we are losing and giving up of this elements of organizing in the small communities, and also responsibility in the small communities, that you are responsible for taking care of fires, bringing them, or some classes for children, or your church and your group in the church, that you're organizing something for elderly or for children or for disabled in the level of community, then you don't test yourself there, you have a role there, then this is this element of subsidiarity. You have a role in the community on a smaller level, but very often we are giving up this. First of all, living in very big cities, in isolation, and secondly, destroying the part of church communities and the part of faith. And we very often go to churches as individuals, and we don't even know who is praying next to us.
Yes,
even if, of course, if we go to church, because I made this assumption, a stupid assumption, because looking at the statistic, most of us even don't want to go to church. But very often we don't want to go to church because of this anonymous part that we feel there very often as only clients who came, pray, take let's say in a Catholic church, take a communion and go home, have no role in the community, also have no responsibility in the community, no space to say anything. And this, we don't feel part of it. We feel part in a theatrical show, and you don't want to be a visitor only. You want to take part. If you take part, you feel responsible.
Yes, and if you take part, if you feel responsible, you have time and space to know each other and to know and realize what is really needed there for those concrete people. And in my opinion, we are generally acting, we used to act in terms of theoretical reasons. So if we see any problems, social problems, of course, there are a lot of problems, many homeless people in the Western Europe, not only in Poland, many social problems which are real and important. And then we try to figure out how they could be solved on a level of the state. And of course, we are proposing our way of solving those problems. And then we are realizing that there are many ways of solving them. Yes. So we have liberals and communitarians and socialists and so on, so on, so on. And there is no final solution. There is only political fight. Of course, we have changing government because of that. It's okay. We are used to live in a democracy, but we are losing the dimension of individual contact, individual action, individual responsibility, knowing people. And it's only possible when we know people surrounding us. So it's possible in small societies, local societies. It's possible, especially at home, because we know each other. We are spending time, to realize how problems, which problems have your neighbor. You have to look at, see what has happened. And of course, you cannot. I don't know the high rate of suicide, very big problem. And if we ask, should it be solved at the level of the state? Yes, it should, but it won't work without supporting from the level of grassroots. So we have to look at people who surrounding us and think about their problems, their involvement. Then we are feel useful, and we are really useful for them. So in my opinion, the idea of subsidiarity is more needed now than ever, because we are split into fighting groups on political level with the wrong idea that grasping a state will solve those problems. And of course, the government is changing and problems are staying with us because they are only partially possible to solve on the level of the state. And some people even think that more useful will be putting those problems on even higher levels, or on the level of the European Union, I mean, or on a global scale. Yes, that we should
global government.
Yeah, and
it will take us all to paradise.
Yes, and when you are thinking in terms of practical rationality, you are looking for far-reaching consequences of particular action. And you can think that way only knowing circumstances of that action, because each action will give you completely different results, depends on the circumstances in which it is taken. So that's the reason why help, of course, there is a need of state, and I am teaching political philosophy, so I can give a few lectures about positive side effect of historical improvement of political organization, state structure, and so on, so on, so on. But in my opinion, we are at that level that we have to realize that some of those problems cannot be solved at the level of the state. And people fighting strong and, with passion, emotions.
Especially on internet.
Yes, but not only on internet, even on everyday life level, it's difficult to speak about politics because people start to be angry because they are grouping themselves in environment of people who think exactly as they do. It's a little bit crazy, yes? And we realize that it goes in the wrong direction, gives us more and more fear because both sides are
Polarized.
Yes, showing the other as a threat to
Democracy.
threat to democracy, to even existential level of life. It's a little bit scary for me.
So just to sum up this discussion, I would say, would you agree with me that the sort of resolution to it, to answer to many of those issues and problems which we are currently facing, would be the element, the virtue of responsibility. Take over the responsibility of things around you, your small community, and most of all, your family. Start with it. And this load of responsibility brings you also to the practical reason that when you start to resolve certain problems, you see that the reality is very often on the level of finding some middle point, as Aristotle would say.
Yes, and in my opinion, we should realize that we are taking results of our action consciously or unconsciously. So we are making decisions in our everyday life, and we are living with the consequences of those decisions. And there is no state which solve the problem of our decisions and consequences of our personal decisions. And but that level is almost
Forgotten.
Yes, forgotten, and everyone is trying to push his view by political involvement on the level of the state or European Union. But much more important is the level of the individual
and the family. So
yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was Professor Agnieszka Nogal in Common Sense Generation. You can hear and listen more of her lectures, of course, at the Warsaw University. I do hope you liked it, and I do hope that the rule of subsidiarity comes into your mind. At least you will check it out and think about what sort of problems you can resolve on the level of the family, of your community, because this is the moment when we have to be brave enough to face the problem. And thank you very much for watching our show. And I would like to thank the Polish National Foundation for making this video podcast possible. This is Common Sense Generation. Common Sense Generation.